Well, a few videos ago, I was wearing a shirt that said poverty is a policy choice, and we're going to talk about what exactly that means. My name is Brittany Page. This is the Page Perspective. I'm wearing a different shirt that has a different saying on it today that is, of course, available in the merch store at dollamore.info. So we have the poverty is a policy choice shirt. We have I don't care what the founding fathers said. That stirred up some controversy over on Jesse Dollamore's channel. He did a video explainer on what it means, and hopefully it is straightforward. We're going to be moving studios soon, so the background may look different in the upcoming videos. Just be prepared for a change. I know sometimes change is hard, but I think this is going to be a good change, a really positive change, and we're looking forward to what the new year will bring. Keep the likes, subscribes, comments, emails, voicemails, all of it coming my way. I have so enjoyed getting to know those of you in the audience and hearing from you, so keep that coming. So last month, Congress advanced a bill to keep the government running until next fall. Of course, they left out some very important programs, and I want us to take this energy with us as we have this conversation. This is AOC glaring at Joe Manchin, and of course, we can lay a lot of the blame at Joe Manchin's feet for the failure to continue the child tax credit. But it's not just him. A lot of Republicans were not in favor of continuing the child tax credit, even though it did so much good. So we're expanding the range of people that we are giving the AOC glare to. And it's anyone who caused the child tax credit to not continue because it was so important. So let's talk about that. First, I want to say, budgets are moral documents. They lay out our priorities as a society, and they are necessary to keep the government running, obviously, but it is a failure that the child tax credit was not continued. So what is the child tax credit? Some of you may not know. During the pandemic in March 2021, the American Rescue Plan expanded the child tax credit from $2,000 to $3,600 per child under the age of 6 and $3,000 per child ages 6 through 17. And this also included an advanced monthly payment, including $300 per child under 6 and $250 per child ages 6 through 17. Now, this also expanded the eligibility to include parents who didn't make enough money to file tax returns. It was big. Millions of children were included in this. And it's a big deviation from how the policy typically works, because in this country, we do not trust people to make decisions with their own money. And you hear this a lot from Republicans when they talk about how people will spend their food stamp money, for example, their SNAP benefits. What will they be buying with it? They're very concerned about this. And so it was a departure from the way that policy typically operates in this country, where the government was actually giving checks to parents and letting them decide on their own how best to spend that money. So they trusted them. And I want you to stop and think about how much this money, right, $300 a month or $250 a month, depending on the age, how this would have changed your childhood, made it better. I know for me, it would have been an absolute game changer. We had 4 kids in my family. My mom was a single mom, and it would have been transformative for her to have that additional money in her account every month to help prepare her to raise us on her own. So I want to talk about that for a moment, because you may be wondering, well, how did people actually spend the money that they were getting with the child tax credit? Well, according to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, some 91% of families with low incomes, that is less than $35,000, are using their monthly child tax credit payments for the most basic household expenses: food, clothing, shelter, utilities, or education. Families are making these investments nationwide in every state and the District of Columbia. Large majorities of low-income families are making such use of the credit. Now, looking at this graph, you can see the breakdown here and how the money was spent. And I want to note that the education costs there includes books, school supplies, tuition, after-school programs, and even transportation to and from school. And again, according to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, these findings are consistent with evidence from Canada, where parents, particularly those with low incomes, spend their child allowances on essentials and education expenses. A sizable share of U.S. households with incomes above $35,000 also spent the credit on necessities, but a smaller share did so than lower-income families who face more difficulties affording the basics. Now, these findings mirror what we see in the research on universal basic income, UBI, for example, that when you give people money, they know best how to spend it to meet their needs. And, when we're talking about poor people are not poor because they can't manage their money. They're poor because they don't have money. It isn't the avocado toast, my friends. It is because they don't have cash. But when you give them cash, they spend it on things that they need: food, clothing, education expenses. They spend it on the things that they need to support their families, and they know what those things are. And the impact of the child tax credit was clear, according to reporting from NPR. The first payment in July kept 3 million children out of poverty, says policy director at the Columbia University Center on Poverty and Social Policy. By December, the benefit was keeping 3.7 million children out of poverty. The researcher and her colleagues looked at the benefit's effect on child poverty rates from month to month. In July 2021, for example, with the first monthly payment, the researchers write that the monthly child poverty rate fell from 15.8% to 11.9%. The first child tax credit payment in July 2021 on its own reduced the monthly child poverty rate by 26%. So with this one policy, child poverty was reduced and millions of children were out of poverty because of this one policy. And according to an estimate from the Census Bureau, the child poverty rate fell by 46% to its lowest level in 2021 because of the expansion of the child tax credit. Now, I want you to imagine being in a position of power, being an elected politician, being in Congress, reading this information about the child tax credit, this one policy, cutting child poverty in such a substantial way, giving parents the ability to care for their children, buying them the necessities, the food, the education, whatever they need. And instead of helping people escape poverty, instead of working to make it permanent, you instead take it away and say, no, we're not doing that anymore. I mean, imagine that. Imagine being in a position of power and doing that. And it didn't just cut child poverty. It didn't just give people cash to meet their own needs. It also cut food insufficiency. Food insufficiency happens when over the course of a week, a family doesn't have enough to eat, sometimes or often. Throughout the pandemic, insufficiency rates have fluctuated, spiking in late 2020. The 6 monthly child tax credit payments of 2021, though, appeared to cut food insufficiency among families by 26%. So we know that Republicans complain, well, how are people going to spend this money? We know that they spend it on ways that reduce food insecurity, on ways that prevent homelessness. They invest in their childhood education. But do they stop working because they have a little bit more cash? This is also something that Republicans talk about, that poor people will no longer want to work. There's a cash incentive for them not to work if we give them assistance. Well, according to the research, no, this didn't happen either. And in addition to all the benefits I've already discussed, researchers find that there's no disruption to parental employment with the child tax credit monthly checks. People aren't quitting their jobs because they're getting a couple $100s a month to care for their kids. That's not what happened with the child tax credit. So with all of this positive progress, I can't help but think, what's going to happen to the people whose lives were transformed by just $250 a month, $300 a month per kid, What is going to happen to them? And unfortunately, we're seeing that more children are falling back into poverty without the child tax credit in place. Researchers at Columbia University found that 3.7 million more children were in poverty in January 2022 compared to December 2021, simply because of the expiration of the monthly child tax credit. So families are worried about how to feed their kids, how to pay electric bills to keep the heat on, how to afford necessary school supplies to help ensure that their kids are successful in school. I mean, the things in the other category too, by the way, of how parents spent the child tax credit per month, those are things that are like, a bonus in life that make life not miserable. Things like getting a birthday cake and birthday presents for your child so that they have a memorable childhood experience on their birthday. It's things like going to the movies. I mean, when we talk about what poor people do with their money, and Republicans malign poor people and say, well, they shouldn't be getting soda, they shouldn't be getting candy, they shouldn't be getting lobster. I mean, these are things that help make life not miserable, right? If you get to have a nice meal every once in a while, if you get to have a birthday cake on your birthday. Anytime I hear Republicans try to say that poor people shouldn't be able to buy this or that, all I hear is, I want poor people to suffer. That's what I hear. I think we can afford putting the child tax credit back in place, especially with all of the benefits that came with it. But unfortunately, the latest spending bill outlines our priorities. And apparently the priority is military spending, because they somehow found a way to fund $858 billion in military spending. You heard that right. $858 billion in military spending. And according to reporting from Judd Lugham, this is an increase of $273 billion from 2015, when the military budget was $585 billion. The budget of the Pentagon now exceeds the budgets for the next 10 largest cabinet agencies combined. Current defense spending, after adjusting for inflation, is higher than it was at any point during the Cold War. 2023 will represent the largest U.S. military budget since World War II. And you might think, well, is this because of Ukraine? And no, it's not. More than half of the budget will go to private contractors as usual. And we don't even know, quite frankly, how the funds will be spent, because the Pentagon, they can't pass an audit. So I would highly recommend that you read the article that I cited here. It is in the description below by Judd Lugham, because it really goes deep on this stuff if it is of interest to you. But the key point here that we do not want to miss: all the things I talk about, all of the necessary public policy to alleviate pain and suffering of human beings, we have the money to fund it. It's just that we are not prioritizing it. And that is more clear than ever when we see how much money we can allocate for military spending in the face of child poverty increasing in this country, because we've done away with the child tax credit. We've done away with giving people $250 a month, $300 a month per kid. Negotiations on the child tax credit are supposed to continue this year into 2023. So this isn't over. We still have a chance to substantially cut child poverty in this country using things like the child tax credit. But I don't know that we should just stop at substantial cuts, right? I mean, if we have the ability to cut child poverty by 40%, 50%, that means we can cut it by 60%, 70%, 100% through policy, by making our priorities in line with the society that we want to see. And if we don't want to have child poverty, then we put the policies into place that eliminate child poverty. So next time you see me wearing the Poverty is a Policy Choice shirt, hopefully it will be clear what that means, particularly using this example with the child tax credit. Now, in a country as wealthy as the United States, poverty is a choice, and it is a political one, and it is hopefully a choice that we will change and make a different choice. What do you think? Please give me a call, 657-464-7609, or you can send an email to idoubitit@dollamore.com. You can also support us on Patreon, patreon.com/idoubtitpodcast. Follow me on social media. I'm on all of them, I think, at Brittany E. Page. I'm even on Post, because when Twitter goes down, given how Elon Musk is handling Twitter, I am prepared with my backups. So be sure to check out the podcast too. We do 2 episodes per week. It's been a little slim because of the holidays, but we're going to get back to 2 episodes a week. And it's more of a long form discussion, including listener feedback, and it is a great resource to check out. So I hope you enjoyed this, hope you found it useful, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts. I will see you next time.